Greetings everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. In this video, I want to highlight some easy mistakes to avoid in Baldur's Gate 3, or just give you some general tips that will help make your playthrough easier. Of course, what's most important is that you do what's fun for you. So by all means, if following a tip here would make your experience less fun, then just ignore it. My channel focuses on RPGs, so if you enjoy this video and want to see similar content, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. Alright, starting at number 1, make sure you take your time in character creation. There are few things worse than getting several hours into a game only to start over for a goofy reason. You don't like the way your character looks, you chose the wrong voice, you selected fighter, but what you really want to do is sling around spells, stuff like that. At this time, you cannot change your appearance after character creation, so take it slow. Really think through how you want to play, and make sure you are comfortable with your choices so you don't end up restarting 3 or 4 times before finally getting into a playthrough. Number 2, since we're on the subject of character creation, I think it's worth noting that potions are very easy to create and powerful enough to serve as your main source of healing throughout the entire game. Consequently, there is no need to have a character whose main purpose is to be a healer. Also, while all the skills are important, there's a case to be made that perception and sleight of hand are the most important skills. Perception allows you to discover traps, hidden objects, and objects you can interact with, such as weak walls that can be knocked down. Traps are everywhere in the game, and some of them are absolutely lethal, so it's very important you can discover them easily. Sleight of hand is necessary for picking locks and disarming traps. No need to explain why this is a critical skill to have. Number 3, make sure you are periodically doing a full save, and don't forget about hitting F5 for a quick save. Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't autosave nearly as often as it should, so it's easy to lose quite a bit of progress. Also, unlike most games, BG3 lets you keep up to 50 quick saves in addition to the full ones, so take full advantage and save your game often. Number 4, let's cover some useful hotkeys. Alt highlights items that you can pick up or interact with. It doesn't highlight everything you can loot, so it's still important to run your mouse over areas to see if the gold chest icon comes up to let you know there are more items to gain. Items highlighted in orange are quest related. When looting an object that holds multiple items, you can press the spacebar to take everything. Holding shift allows you to see what areas your enemies or nearby NPCs can see. This is useful if you want to steal something or sneak up on someone. Pressing C causes you to crouch and enter sneak mode, which will give you the same view. The difference is, in a fight, going into sneak mode will use a bonus action, whereas holding down shift is free. Pressing Shift and C at the same time will cause your entire team to either enter or leave sneak mode. Tilde, which is in the upper left of your keyboard below the escape key, allows you to highlight all nearby NPCs, whether they be friend or foe. This is a great way to make sure you have spoken with everyone in a particular area. Z allows you to jump, which is something you need to do quite often. T expands the tooltip that you see when highlighting items. It will also pin the tooltip so you can hover over highlighted words and get more information about what the item is. Pressing O gives you an over-the-top view that can be very useful in combat to figure out where enemies are located and what your next move should be. Number 5, let's talk about inventory management. You can press I to bring up the inventory of the character you currently have selected, or press Tab to bring up the inventory of your entire party. In the upper left, there is a sort button allowing you to reorganize all of your items. You will start the game with a few pouches that will hold your alchemical components, camping supplies, and similar objects. As you explore, you can come across more pouches and add them into your inventory for more filtering options. For example, you might want to keep all your potions or grenades in a separate place. Keep in mind this doesn't remove the weight of that item, so you still need to carefully decide what you do and don't want to keep. If you select an item, then hold down Shift and select another item, those 2 items along with all of the items in between will be highlighted. You can then drag them into a pouch or another party member's inventory. You can also right-click an item to send it to another party member's inventory. This is very useful if one character has significantly more strength and inventory space than everyone else. You also have an Add to Wares option, which marks this item as one you want to sell the next time you speak with a vendor. If an item is quest related, you will almost always get get a journal update or cutscene when picking it up. If that didn't occur, then you can feel free to sell it. In my experience, the game doesn't have gotcha moments where you happen to pick up a critical quest item and didn't even realize it. You also can send any items to camp, and there's a chest with unlimited weight which will house all those items for you. This means you never need to keep camping supplies, because when you rest, the game will check your stores to see what supplies are available. Next to the filter button is a search bar if you need to find a specific item and are not sure which party member has it. In the bottom middle of your screen is a button that says Custom. Clicking it will open up a menu that allows you to set up items for quick access. For example, if you know you love to use potions of speed, you can drag it down here. Now whenever you press 1, your character will automatically drink one of those potions. Same with using scrolls or priming a throwable object for use. There are 12 slots that you can use. Each party member has their own quick use hotbar, so you can set up items for easy access based on each of their playstyles. Just keep in mind whatever item they are supposed to use has to actually be in their inventory, not just the party's inventory overall. Number 6, let's talk about vendors. There's an approval bar on the lower right that is easy to miss, especially if you have never played a Larian game before. This bar decides how much the vendor likes you and impacts their prices when buying and selling items. Acts are split into separate hub maps, so you will have to revisit the same vendors several times throughout your playthrough. It's well worth your time to increase the approval of a vendor you like. You can do this by double-clicking items that you want to sell, but instead of clicking the scales at the bottom to have the vendor give you gold, just click the barter button so that you'll give the items away for free. The vendor's approval will increase depending upon the value of the items you have given away. There is a ton of trash for you to pick up, so giving away enough trash items to increase a vendor's approval and then selling the valuable items that you don't need is very easy to do. At the top of the vendor screen, you can switch from barter to trade, and this gives you the sell wares button at the bottom, which will automatically sell all the items you have marked as wares. Keep in mind this process will only be completed if the vendor has enough gold to buy all of your wares. This screen also lets you double-click items to directly sell them as opposed to queuing the items up the way you do in the barter screen. Number 7 is don't ignore crafting. I've already mentioned health potions are easy to craft and very powerful. You can also make potions of speed, which give you 2 turns of haste. Haste gives you an extra action, so it's very powerful regardless of your playstyle. There are bombs that pull enemies and objects into a central location or explode into fire. Poison coatings will give your weapons temporary unique effects. Crafting isn't useful the entire game, but definitely in the beginning, you want to utilize all of your resources and periodically check the list of what you have unlocked to see if there's anything that can really help you. Number 8, talk to all the NPCs and read all of the books. You don't need to literally read them, but just click on them so that the books open up and the game registers that you have seen them. There are a ton of ways to advance quests or pick up experience points in this game, and you don't want to miss them. In conversations, keep in mind that just because you see a whole list of questions doesn't mean you will be allowed to select them all. So always select your most pressing question first and then take whichever ones are still available. Sometimes re-entering a dialogue will allow you to select options that you previously could not choose. Number 9, make sure you take long and short rests regularly. You get 2 short rests and they allow you to regain 50% of your hit points. If you are a warlock, this will let you regain spell slots as well. This is great to use if you still have most of your abilities, but you just need to heal up before the next fight. Long rests fully restore your health, spell slots, and any abilities you have. It also brings you into camp, and the game loves using these moments to advance quests or just show you special content. There's a near endless amount of food and supplies, so don't worry about resting so often that you'll run out. Speaking of camp, if you click the camp icon in the lower right, don't forget that there's an option to just go to your camp. So if all you want to do is switch out a party member real quick and you don't need to rest, then just use that option. Number 10, since we're on the subject of camping, make sure you talk with all of your party members on a regular basis. Many of them have quests that aren't advanced properly if you don't engage them in dialogue. Even if you don't like a party member, there's a wealth of XP and story content to be gained by helping them with their issues. Also make sure you bring party members along when you are journeying in areas that are clearly related to them. Sometimes having that character will give you special options, or you can gain a significant amount of approval points. By the way, a companion's approval doesn't determine whether or not they'll tell you about their quest or let you help them. Instead, it decides during pivotal moments whether or not they'll let you influence them to do something they don't actually want to do. So again, even if their approval is very low, don't think they don't have a lot of content to provide. Number 11, one final note about the camp: don't forget that withers can allow you to respec your character or give you hirelings. If you left Act 1 and didn't pick him up, don't worry, he'll make his way to you in Act 2. I definitely recommend you respec all of the companions, because their ability spread is weird, with odd numbers and high scores and abilities they don't actually need. Hirelings could be very useful to you in a pure evil run, where all of your companions don't make it. Number 12, give every character a bow and a shield. There will be many times when your party member cannot reach melee distance with an enemy, and pulling out a bow to do at least a little bit of damage will be very useful. Even for spellcasters like Gale, who wouldn't actually use a bow, it's great to have, because the bow's effects will count for him whether he uses it or not. For example, as Will, I never used a bow, but I had one on my character that provided resistance to fire and cold damage. It also gave him one free casting of the haste spell. All of this counted for him even when he was actually using a shield and quarterstaff. All shields provide at least a +2 bonus to armor class. Unlike tabletop D&D and Baldur's Gate 3, humans automatically get proficiency with shields. That means Will and Gale can use shields even if you don't multi-class them or change them out of their spellcasting classes. Just like bows, many shields come with useful effects, such as a +1 bonus to spell save difficulty class or advantage on perception ability checks. Obviously, you cannot use shields if you wield two weapons or two-handed melee weapons. Otherwise, you should absolutely be using a shield and checking to see which ones will help your playstyle. Number 13, make sure you are only using equipment you are proficient with. This is a very easy mistake to make because helmets, gloves, and boots oftentimes have armor proficiencies associated with them. So you can look at some gloves that provide lightning charges and stick them on your warlock, not realizing that you just made the character significantly worse. Characters cannot use their proficiency bonus with gear they are not proficient with. This could also block spellcasters from using some of their spells or prevent rogues from using sneak attack. When you have a character selected, if you hover over a piece of equipment they are not proficient with, there will be a small message letting you know. To check a character's proficiencies, go to the character sheet and then click on the Detailed View tab. It will list what your proficiency bonus is and what proficiencies you have. Number 14, make sure someone on your team can raise dead and or talk with animals. Throughout your journey, you'll come across corpses with individual names, giving you a hint that they might be able to provide some useful information. Sometimes casting raise dead on this corpse will allow you to ask a few questions. There are many quests in Baldur's Gate 3 where you really aren't given enough information to know what you should do next. Talking with corpses is a great way to advance quests and know what your next action should be. It also can reveal information that you couldn't find out any other way. Once you cast Raise Dead for the first time during a day, any other corpses that you can speak with will be outlined in blue, and the spell lasts until you take a long rest. Talk with animals works in a similar way, but I would say it's a lower priority. A lot of the conversations with animals are more so based around funny or entertaining interactions as opposed to actually helping you complete a quest you are struggling with. Definitely still great to have, and there's some really cool things you cannot do unless you use this regularly, so I still recommend you make sure it's covered. Animals you can talk with are not highlighted in blue, but this spell does last until you take a long rest. If you don't have anyone who automatically gets these spells, there are potions and scrolls that you can use to cast them as long as you are capable of casting level 3 spells. The Ritual Caster feat will also allow you to cast both of these spells without using a spell slot, although that's a questionable use of a feat. Number 15, use your inspiration points. Each of your party members has a background, and when you perform an action that aligns with that background, the party member will gain an inspiration point along with some XP. For example, Will has the folk hero background, so he's inspired when you save innocent people or defeat evil monsters. These inspiration points can be used to reroll failed checks. If you fail a check in dialogue, you'll see an option to use one of these points if you'd like to try again. You should absolutely do this. There is no reason to stockpile these points. You are limited to 4 points, so if you hit that mark, then the game will only provide the additional XP. Also, as I said before, all of your party members have a background, so you are gaining these points constantly. Don't be scared to use one or even multiple points on a difficult check. Also keep in mind the experience points from inspiration only apply to the party member who has that background. Consequently, depending on your playstyle, some party members might level up faster than you or other members of the party. Number 16, let's talk about long rest spells. So when you look at the tooltip for some spells, you'll see it says until long rest. That means you can cast a spell and it will last until you take a long rest. The disadvantage here, of course, is that you have to remember to cast the spell every time you finish taking a long rest. The advantage is you only have to cast the spell once and it will last you the entire day. Also, unlike concentration spells, which we will talk about in a bit, this spell is not broken when you take a certain amount of damage and it will stack with other spells. Some other spells might have a specific number of turns that it lasts instead of saying long rest. For example, if we look at Mage Hand, you'll see it lasts for 10 turns. The vast majority of combat encounters won't be longer than that, so basically this is set up to be useful for one fight and then the spell is gone. If you cast one of these spells before a conversation, the timer will still tick down while you are talking. If you're trying to overcome a tough fight that starts with a conversation, it can be useful to pre-buff, skip through all the convo, and then jump into the fight, which will usually allow you to retain at least a few turns of the spells. Notice for Mage Hand, below 10 turns, it says short rest. That means the spell can only be used one time after you complete a short or long rest. Number 17, let's talk about concentration spells. There are some spells that are ongoing effects, and a spellcaster needs to concentrate in order to keep them going. A good example of this is Haste, which gives you one additional action per turn. This spell lasts for 10 turns, but it also requires concentration. If your concentration breaks, then you will essentially lose the spell. Sometimes this can have a negative effect, such as with Haste, which causes you to become lethargic once it ends, essentially wasting one of your turns. For most spells, breaking concentration just means you lose the effect and the spell slot you use to cast it is wasted. You are only allowed to use one concentration spell per character, so if your warlock is using Haste and then you try to activate Hex, which is also a concentration spell, you will break your Haste spell, become lethargic, and lose your turn. I am an expert at this game, so I never did this. I certainly didn't do it a dozen times. If you take damage while you are concentrating on the spell, you have to roll a check to determine if you maintain concentration. The DC equals 10 or half of the damage that you take, whichever number is higher. If you take damage from multiple sources, you have to make a separate saving throw for each source of damage. Consequently, if you are going to use these spells on a regular basis, it might be worth investing heavily into Constitution, which will increase your ability to make those saving throws, or take the Warcaster feat, which will give you advantage when you have to roll them. Number 18, make sure your reactions are set up properly. If you open up the character sheet and click the spellbook at the top, you'll see there's a tab for reactions. Reactions are spells or abilities that are triggered by something an enemy has done. They are awesome, and I recommend stockpiling as many of them as you can. You have the choice of letting these happen automatically, or you can click the Ask button to ensure the game will prompt you to confirm you actually want to do this. I'd recommend you set all of them to Ask for multiple reasons. You only get one reaction per turn, so you might not want to use a reaction yet. There are multiple spells that are reactions, and they can be upcast if lower spell levels aren't available. You might not want to burn a level 4 spell slot on a reaction. Sometimes you might have multiple party members with the same reaction, and you don't want all of them to use it at the same time. For example, in my playthrough, both Will and Gale had Counterspell, which is triggered when an enemy uses a spell and attempts to nullify it. Every time an enemy casted a spell, I received a prompt for both Gale and Will. I could have both of them try to nullify the spell, or neither of them, or choose one and let the other sit that one out. Also, setting it up this way gives you more information about what the enemy is doing, because the game tells you what action the enemy has taken to prompt this reaction. So if I received a prompt because an enemy is casting Fireball, not only is it great to have an opportunity to nullify that, but now I also know I need to take this enemy out quickly, because they are the one most likely to light up my entire party. Number 19, make sure your passives are set up properly. At the bottom middle of your screen, next to Custom is the Passives button. This provides a list of the passives your character has, and if you see a rotating circle around one of them, that means the passive is active. All party members have the non-lethal toggle, which is great to use if you want to eliminate someone without actually killing them, such as a civilian who doesn't have control of their actions. In addition, as you gain feats or class mechanics, it's possible this list will expand. For example, I had to keep careful track of Will's repelling blast passive because it would push enemies back 4.5 meters. If I pushed an enemy into a chasm, then their items wouldn't be available. I gave Karlach the Great Weapon Master feat, which provides a passive that gives her a plus 10 to damage, but also reduces her attack by 5. If I found it became incredibly difficult to hit enemies, it might be a good idea to turn it off. Make sure you are keeping a handle on what's active here. Number 20, you can throw potions at characters or place them on the ground and attack to make them explode. This is very useful if you have a party member who is downed and needs health to get back up, or you need to heal an NPC and cannot access their inventory. Number 21, pressing Shift plus Spacebar will activate turn-based mode. This causes time to move in small increments while your party members each take their turns. This is a great way to sneak around or position your party just right before a fight. It's also nice if you are using a buff to accomplish something and want to take your time to ensure a task is done properly before the spell wears off. Pressing G or hitting the button beneath your character portraits along the left will split up your party, allowing you to easily place them wherever you like. This leads into number 22, always mind your surroundings. Make sure when you are splitting up and positioning characters before a fight that you are setting them up for success. Ranged characters get a +2 bonus to attack when they have the high ground. Oil can be set on fire, and water can be electrified. Braziers can oftentimes be shot down to inflict fire area of effect damage on multiple enemies. The push action can be used to knock enemies off of high perches, and fall damage is absolutely devastating in this game. Choke points can be used to funnel enemies into devastating spells, or ensure your tank takes the brunt of whatever damage your foes can dish out. If you are having difficulty getting through a fight, take a look around to see what you can use. Number 23, make sure you are using your weapon skills. I gave Karlach a halberd, which automatically comes with a rush attack. This attack does less damage, but it allows her to rush towards an enemy without taking an attack of opportunity, and if it hits, the foe is knocked off balance, causing all attacks against them to have advantage. This is a great option that I took advantage of all the time. Many of the other weapon types have unique attacks that you are probably missing if you haven't taken the time to look at them. In your weapon tooltip, it will list all of the attacks that it provides, so make sure you are aware of your options. Number 24, make sure you use your bonus attacks and extra attacks. For the first 20 hours of the game, you will be mostly limited to one attack, but at some point you'll hit level 5, and then if all your attacks are in one martial class, then you'll probably get an extra attack. This allows you to do a melee strike twice in one turn instead of just once. This is automatically provided, so it's easy to miss that your capabilities have expanded in this way. In addition, some weapons or feats will provide you with a melee attack you can use with your bonus action. Once again, it's easy to miss this, since the game doesn't tell you there's a bonus attack available for you to use. Also keep in mind that for the most part, extra attacks do not stack. So if you have 5 levels in Paladin and 5 levels in Fighter, you still only have 1 extra attack. At this time, the extra attack from Warlock's Pact of the Blade stacks with other classes. My assumption is this is a bug that Larian will at some point correct, but I am not certain about that. Also, Fighter is able to stack extra attacks, but only with itself. They get an improved extra attack at level 11 that stacks with the one they get at level 5. Finally, at number 25, the last tip I have on this list is to focus on weaker enemies and whittle them down one at a time. In Baldur's Gate 3, the amount of health an enemy has doesn't determine how much damage they can do to you, so an enemy with only 1 health is just as dangerous as an enemy who is untouched. In most fights, it'll be in your best interest to focus on weak enemies first and quickly eliminate them. Then you can focus fire on the elites and bosses. Spreading your damage across all your enemies will just allow all of them to live longer and result in you taking much more damage than you should. To that same end, make sure you are using the examine option during tough fights. At any time during combat, you can right-click an enemy and press examine to bring up their character sheet. The resistances section is very important because it will let you know if an enemy takes half or completely nullifies a particular type of damage. You also want to look at the features section because that might provide special information about an enemy. For example, it might tell you that that they are sensitive to light, so if you cast a spell like Daylight on them, all of your party would get advantage on attack rolls against that foe. I've read in a couple of places that you can also get special dialogue options if you examine an NPC before talking with them, but I have never seen that in practice. If you have, then please leave me a comment down below providing an example of where that can be done. That's all the tips I have to help you avoid common mistakes in Baldur's Gate 3. If you have additional suggestions or tips that I have missed, please let me know in the comments down below. Hope all of you enjoyed this video. Take care!